Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be installing this diesel heater. It's super easy to do. I think anybody can do it. And I'm kind of laying things out right now. I'm going to put the unit right here, facing that way. And I'm going to build an enclosure to mount the diesel tank right here. I already have the screen mounted right there. The wires are coming out right here. And I'll need to drill like a 4-inch hole right here. If you're trying to decide between the $1,200 Webasto heater or the Chinese diesel heater, these are like 170, 180 bucks. I'd go with these. I mean, if you figure once you install this, you cut all the holes, if anything ever went wrong, you could always just buy another one, just pop the old one out, pop the new one in, and it would take you about 8 or 9 of these to equal the price of just one of the expensive ones. So for me, it's worth it to go with the Chinese diesel heater. I think it makes a lot more sense. They work great. I'm using the 5 kilowatt model. There's also a 2 kilowatt model and a 7 kilowatt model. The 5 kilowatt model is more than enough for a small space like a van. I'll provide a link for the one I'm using and also the 2 kilowatt and the 7 kilowatt model. The first thing I need to do is take some measurements and find out where I have room to drill a 4-inch hole through the bottom of the van. So I've taken some measurements. I'm 34 inches from the rear of the bumper to here. And I want to have it as far in towards this as I can go. I think there's like a steel beam right here under the van, so it's going to end up around here, but I want to be as far in as I can to maximize storage back here. So I've measured 34 in under the van right here, and I took my bit and went under the van. And under the van here I've got a spot right here which is 34 inches in, so I made a little dot right there with a marker. And I'll take a very small drill bit and I'll drill a pilot hole straight up through the van, see where that comes out. And if that works, then I can drill the big hole with the 4-inch down from that pilot hole. Okay, so that hole came up right there, which should be perfect. That'll give me a 4-inch hole right there, and that'll put the unit right about there. Real nice and tight up against this wall where I want it. I'm going to use this crazy powerful drill just because I have it, but you can do this with a regular drill. Just make sure you have a fully charged battery. As you go through each layer, you just gotta pop out these pieces. Layer left is the metal. I don't always mention this, but anytime I make a hole under the van, of course I'm going to spray it with some Rust-Oleum spray paint. I just have a cardboard box sitting over the hole up top so none of the spray paint gets inside the van. I've seen some people just make smaller holes for each pipe, for the exhaust pipe and the intake pipe, and I don't think that's a good idea, especially with the foam insulation here and then your wood subfloor. The exhaust pipe's going to get pretty hot, and I like to have a little bit of extra room around it. So the next thing I need to do is seal all of this, and I'm going to use a special fire barrier sealant. Let me show you that. This is the 3M fire barrier sealant. And I'll just put this in my caulking gun and go around here with a latex glove and just spread it all around. Probably take 2 coats and I'll let it dry overnight. Link in the description for this as well. And I just finished that from the bottom, but you can see I got a pretty good seal here. I'll wait for that to dry and then I can move on to the next step. Okay, next step, we put the metal plate over the 2 pipes like that. This is going to be the fuel line here, which will be closest to the intake side. This is the exhaust, so you know the fuel line's going to be closest to the intake side because that is made out of plastic. That can heat up. So this will be our exhaust. I'm going to put this pipe over here, and the intake pipe is this one. This will go over here, and we'll clamp these on. So we got the intake connected and the exhaust connected. You don't want to put the muffler on and this little intake cover on yet, because then it might not fit through the hole as easily. Do that on the bottom. The next thing we need to do is connect the fuel line here. Once we put this through the hole and mount it, we're not going to really have much access to this stuff anymore. So we need to do it all now. Here's the fuel line here. And some of these kits are different. Some of the other ones just have a little pinch clip that goes right on top of the fuel line. This one has a rubber gasket. The rubber gasket goes over the fuel line. This goes inside the rubber gasket. That's how it connects. And then you just put these little clamps over it. So you have to cut however much you're gonna need of this for each fuel line connection. You're gonna have 4 fuel line connections. One here, one on the front of the diesel pump, one on the back of the diesel pump, and then one at the diesel tank itself. So we need to have enough of this for 4. We got more than enough, it looks like. So you can see here I've got 1 clamp on the fuel line coming from the heater, and then I've got the actual fuel line into the rubber here, and I'll clamp this one right here. So it's going to be 2 clamps per connection. Okay, that's all clamped on. This is tight, it's not coming out. So now I can put everything through the floor here. I already went under the van and I made sure that it's centered. So now I can screw it down right where it is. Okay, it's kind of hard to see down here, but now I'm under the van. This is the intake. I'm gonna hide this behind the tire right in here. The exhaust I have coming out this way, back by the rear bumper. And I've attached the muffler to it. This is reversible, you can attach it either way, and then I'm just gonna screw on the clamp here, and then there's a bracket. Okay, I just screwed that bracket in. I hit it with a little bit of spray paint just to be safe. The muffler will come up like this and screw in right there. That should be a nice kind of stealthy look to it. So I'm planning on putting the tank here, but the way these are designed, the fuel line comes out of the bottom, so you can't sit it flat. It's really a stupid design. If I were to design this, I would make it kind of similar to the water tank here, where it has like a low spot here, and you could connect your line right here so that you could sit it right on the floor. But because of that, I have to build something to mount it that's going to be elevated off the floor, so there's room for the fuel line. So what I'm planning on doing is using this 1/2-inch plywood. I'm going to stack 2 of them together on the bottom, and that'll give me 1 inch there. have two sides to it here. They'll get screwed into the plywood. And then I'll have like a false base here, the hole in it for the fuel line to come out. And then a second base, which will be about this long, that I can screw into the bottom of the van. I'll show you what it looks like when I finish it and paint it. This is the filter here. It has an arrow showing the direction of the flow. Connected a fuel line on one side, and then I need to put the filter before the fuel goes into the fuel pump. So that should look like that. Fuel will come in this way from the tank, pump out into the heater. If you've ever used these heaters, you know these fuel pumps are pretty loud and annoying. They make like a constant clicking sound when they're on. So what I want to do is put the fuel pump under the van, which will expose it to the elements, and maybe it won't last as long, but they're not very difficult to replace if that ever happens. So I think it's worth it to have the quiet when you're sleeping. So I need to run this wire, which plugs into the fuel pump. I need to make a hole right here and drill through the van to run the wire under. But I don't want to make a hole this big through the van if I don't need to. So what I'll do is I'll cut the wire, and I can make a hole just this big, and then I can just reconnect the wire up here. I'm just gonna mark this one wire of the two, because I don't know which is positive and negative. I'll mark this with some blue tape so that when I go to reconnect it, I'll know to connect those two together and these two together. Alright, I stuck the wire up from the bottom, and I can pull it up. I'll also be able to cut off a lot of the excess doing it this way. So now I can mount the pump underneath the van. This little rubber thing slides over the pump, and that's what allows you to mount it. Next, we need to install the connection at the bottom of the tank here. You want to use a bit that's slightly smaller than the nut. And you're going to do it right here on this flat spot. Now I need to get the fuel line attachment through the tank, so I put it on this coat hanger, and we're going to stick this through the tank and then pull it out the other end. Make sure you put one of the rubber gaskets on first, which I forgot to do. You can see here I'm using a slightly different fuel line. This is just some of the fuel line I have left over from the last install I did. It's pretty much the same thing though. Now I can run this through here. And there. Now I can finally mount the tank to the wood. Alright, I'm under the van now. This is where the fuel line comes out, and I just need to make the last connection right here onto the fuel filter. So I just have to cut this and connect it right there. Alright, that's connected. So let's take a look at what we have. This is coming from the fuel tank, going through the filter, into the pump, and I've got the wire plugging into the pump, zip tied along the fuel line, and the fuel line's zip tied into the frame of the van here. Going up through the van, everything's sealed off with the fire sealant. There's the exhaust line, which is mounted on the bracket there with the muffler. Used a stainless steel bolt for that. That bolt wasn't included for some reason. There's the intake, and the intake's just zip tied over here. This is actually just the intake for the part of the heater that makes the combustion. It's not for the air you're going to breathe. That's a separate intake inside the van. So don't worry about this being near the muffler, it won't matter. I'm gonna come back when I get a chance and seal this with some marine sealant, like I did on my drain pipe here. I haven't done that yet, but I'll get to that. Okay, so here's the connection that I made going to the fuel pump where I shortened the wire. This wire is going to the screen, the display screen, and then you have a positive and a negative which go to the fuse box. So they have a built-in fuse in here. I'm gonna cut their wire away. I'll just cut it right here. So I'm gonna use our fuse box for our fuse. We can pop their fuse out of here and reuse that. It's a 20 amp fuse, so we'll save that to use in here. But we don't need an inline fuse since we have a fuse box. Back over here so we can hide them. Alright, when I put this fuse in, we should have power. Next thing we need to do is prime the pump so that we can get any air bubbles out of the fuel line. Here's our control screen. So in order to prime the pump, you need to hold these two buttons down. It says H off, we'll hit the on. And that's gonna prime it. You'll start hearing a clicking noise. So as soon as you prime it, you'll start hearing a clicking noise. So we just need to get under here and we can look at the fuel line and you can see the air bubbles traveling through. And you just want to let it keep priming until all the air bubbles are gone. Okay, I ran it through 2 priming cycles. Now I just turned it on a minute ago by holding down the power button for 3 seconds. It takes about 5 minutes for it to fully start up, but I could hear it clicking away and the fan's on. So in a few minutes it should have hot air blowing out. The first time you turn this thing on, don't be alarmed. Sometimes the muffler will blow out some white smoke, just burning off all the oil that's inside there. But that should stop in a minute or 2. That's totally normal the first time you turn it on, don't worry. That'll stop in a few minutes. Okay, so now it's running, and this is how it'll look normally after all the smoke's burned off. And it should be blowing hot air. I'm gonna go check it. Oh yeah, really hot. Perfect. So that's it, this thing's working. The only thing left to do is put in the vent pipes, and then I like to box it in, give it a nice finished look. So I've cut 3 pieces at 16 inches. So create somewhere for me to screw the plywood into, like this. it out. This is what I got. I got a 45-degree angle here. This swivels. This will just get nailed in here, some wood glue. And then I have the supplied hose I have to cut down, connect here with the hose clamps, and connect it here with the hose clamp. And then I just need to cut a piece for the top.
Okay, fat lard.
Bottom section I'm going to nail and glue in, but the top part I want to make a panel that's removable if you ever need to get to this, so that'll get screwed in. Alright guys, that's gonna do it. Fully installed. You got the intake here. This is the exhaust for the hot air. Spin that around anywhere you want it. Let me know if you guys like this video. Do a few things differently. Boxing in this heater so it doesn't waste any garage space. Boxing in the tank there. And also putting the fuel pump underneath the van so it's quieter. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today, but there's a whole bunch more to come, so make sure if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell, which will ensure that you'll see the next video.